strikes continue between the U.S. and Iran, Democrats in Congress are calling for an immediate war powers vote to rein in President Trump's military actions, blasting the operation as potentially unconstitutional. The effort has drawn some Republican support from figures like Congressman Thomas Massie and Senator Rand Paul. But Democrats face headwinds not just from Republicans, but from some in their own party. And every war powers resolution spurred in the past year has eventually failed. Several Democrats who are staunch supporters of Israel, including Senator John Fetterman and 3 House Democrats, have indicated that they may oppose the war powers measure, complicating Democratic leadership's strategy. Trump administration officials are slated to brief congressional committee staff later today on the Iran operation, with broad member briefings expected early this week, according to sources familiar with those preparations. Joining us now to break this down is the top Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Gregory Meeks. Congressman Meeks, I want to ask you about this staff meeting that's coming up this afternoon with top Pentagon officials. What are some of the key questions that you and your staff and other Democratic lawmakers have for the Trump administration right now?
Is what is the plan after? You know, we've had this, seen this before. We had the shock and awe in Iraq. So what happens thereafter? We have not heard from the administration in that regards at all. How long is it going to take? With specificity. We hear the president saying, it could be a week, it could be a month, therefore it could be a year. What are the plans in that regards? Who do we have and who's talking to anyone on the ground? What are we relying upon? Why do we know the innocent lives of Iranians who, when you just see indiscriminately bombing in the middle of Tehran, what happens to those innocent individuals there? And whether or not it creates an atmosphere of civil war on the ground in Iran. And then what does that mean for the entire region? Do we plan on having troops on the ground? Or what happens then, or how do you contain that? These are all kinds of questions that I think that I know I'm directing my staff at the staff meeting, and we may be briefed. I'm told that there may be, there's a gang of 8, but there's an inclusion now of a gang of 12 when you include members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and members of the the ranking members and chairs of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Armed Services Committee, which may take place tomorrow. So there's a lot of unanswered questions that has to be answered.
Congressman, I am doubtful that those answers you laid out, this White House, this administration feels compelled to answer for you. I think what we've seen, and you alluded to this in the conversation with Peter and Susan, is that they may not care about, they don't seem to care about the public poll, but I definitely don't think, no offense to you, and and the folks in Congress, they don't seem to care what Congress says. So if they give you answers, if they don't give you answers, and if they don't give you answers and your colleagues answers that feel truthful, that feel like they actually care about the separation of powers in this country, then what?
So, look, there's a couple of things. Number one, I agree with you. I think that, I have been asking, for example, for a long time on the Foreign Affairs Committee for us, a long time ago, to be conducting hearings, to bring in Secretary Rubio and others within the State Department. But I know that the State Department has really not been involved. There's been just 2 people involved in any of the negotiations or anything of that nature, and that's Jared Kushner and Stephen Witkoff. And they've been going back and forth from Russia and Ukraine to this, so they're not serious about either as far as diplomacy is concerned. And so I think that it is important that there's 2 phases. Number one, we do need to have a vote, because I was in Congress in 2003, and I'm reliving that situation, whereas even though we had access, which we don't have now, Colin Powell came before the Foreign Affairs Committee to testify. I had access to the Pentagon. The United States went to the UN. That is not happening this time.
They explained it to the American people.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That is not happening this time. So we must have a vote, though. I want to be able to say what my position is. We should have had these hearings earlier. I've been pressing my Republican colleagues and the chairman of the committee to do that. He has not done that. So that's why this vote is important, so that people know where we stand. And then 60 days, if this goes on longer than 60 days, then there's another opportunity, because this vote that's coming up on Wednesday is not for the authorization of utilizing military force, where you got to send some money or more money to. President has to then come to Congress to ask for that money. And then there's another opportunity therein to say that we're not going to give it to you because we don't see the need to have this war of choice continuing to move on. And one of my colleagues said that earlier, and that's exactly what this is, a war of choice, not a war of necessity, very similar to 2003 in Iraq, very similar to the war that Russia now is doing in Ukraine, where Russia chose to go to war.
Congressman, in the run-up towards the end of last week, there was a lot of stories, a flurry of diplomatic activity, proposals being sent back and forth. I remember on Friday, the Iranians have put forth a very serious proposal with all of these things that look like, whoa, they're giving the president what he says he wants. And then yesterday, the strikes happened. Yesterday, the president launched a war against Iran, which leads to the question, were those negotiations even serious? Was all that diplomacy that was engaged in by Secretary Rubio, by Witkoff, by Kushner, was it all a ruse?
Jonathan, that's a great question. And I say, we've just heard Prime Minister Netanyahu said they've been planning this for months. This wasn't something that was spontaneous. This wasn't something because there was an immediate threat taking place. This is something that has been planned for months. I was somewhat suspicious of something really going on back when Prime Minister Netanyahu came in to visit the president in the White House. One day, there was no reports about what the meeting was about or anything of that nature, and he was leaving immediately thereafter. That made me worry about something else that's going on. And when you have a situation where the president has decimated the State Department, there's no real State Department. Even the Secretary of State has not been a part of the negotiating process. He's not there. Two real estate negotiators are the ones that are trying to negotiate peace between with Russia and Ukraine, and then going right across the street and then try to negotiate something with Iran and the United States and Israel. It seems to me that's not serious negotiation, and that's not serious diplomacy. And I don't think that this president is ever interested in diplomacy. And that's why when he stepped in, he destroyed the State Department and all of the expertise that we had therein and replaced it with individuals who are just loyal to him, and put people like Kushner and like Witkoff in charge who have never done anything, have no training in this area at all, have no relationships with individuals in that regard at all. So that's not serious negotiations to me.